Yeah, I need a ride.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Piercey, and this is Out of the Fog. It is the month of May. The month of May is Asian Cultural Heritage and Awareness Month. And we are going to speak today with Dr. Tony Fang. He is an economist, a professor here at the university, and a researcher in economic and cultural transformation through immigration. We got a lot of really interesting things to talk about, and the Green Report even is gonna come up. We'll be right back after this.
You're watching Rogers TV.
8 of our friends are dead. Someone forced you to give up their names.
This conspiracy goes deeper than you think.
You had a choice. You turned.
No, I remember.
It's not a good idea for anybody to be out here alone.
Have you thought about what you want your life to be now?
I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm here because I choose to be.
You're watching Rogers TV, St. John's.
And welcome back to Out of the Fog. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Dr. Tony Fang. Dr. Fang is an economist, a professor at Memorial University, and also the chair of the Culture and Economic Transformation Project that the university has going on now.
Yes, formally it's called the Stephen Jarislowsky Chair in Cultural Economic Transformation.
Yes.
It's an expensive chair, actually. Mr. Jarislowsky donated $2 million
that's
to
a lot
that
of money.
social enterprise. We are very proud of that. You know, he gave that chair for special meanings with the belief that economy is the most important issue in the province. However, cultural change is most challenging.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely agree with both of those statements insofar as like I don't think there's anybody really who's paying attention to what's going on in our province right now who wouldn't agree that our economy needs a little massaging.
Exactly.
Yeah, we could use some help.
Right.
But the cultural change thing is important outside of the economic situation that we're in, just in general. Like the added culture I think is just meant to evolve and just become stronger and more accommodating and grow while still preserving individual segments. But in our particular situation, I am of the impression, and I mean, I'm not an economist. I'm just a dude who sits here and talks to people like yourself. I feel like entrepreneurship and immigration are probably the best chance of fixing some of our economic woes.
You are really actually hit on the nail because this is essentially the important pillars of the Atlantic growth strategy, which was introduced by the federal government, provincial government, Atlantic provinces in 2016, right? The important pillar for future economic growth and prosperity in the region are, the first one, attraction of skilled immigrants,
Yes.
immigration. The second one being innovation,
Yes.
okay, and which also linked to cultural diversity and immigration program and international trade, and
Yes.
followed by green, technology and building up of infrastructure. These are 5 pillars under the. You're really insightful in that sense. Those are the future, not what the Green Report has recommended. We should cut back all the services, education and health services. I'm pretty sure, as an economist, this, what do we call it, old-fashioned austerity measures, certainly will scare a lot of people out of the province. Unfortunately, not attracting them, and especially young people. But I have to give some credit to the Green Report. I think they touch a nerve on many important challenges of this province, especially the physical crisis and the demographic crisis. And
Yes.
I fully agree, right? We are at this crisis moment. We need to think out of the box, how to actually build a pie bigger to generate more revenues, not just necessarily cutting back the services, right? In that aspect, I fundamentally disagree with the recommendation of the Green Report. And so this is area I think immigration can play an important role. I'm actually, feel it's gracious that they cite the findings of our recent research of, employer hiring attitude towards immigrants and international students. Mostly positive. 88% of employers in the province had a positive experience about hiring immigrant international students. A lot of issues about, we talked with you a minute ago about the exposure of the immigrants, especially rural, remote community, will actually population declining. And we always experience more severe labor skill shortage. It's kind of irony here in the province.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much in all of that we can unpack. And I think we should do it sort of like step by step. So let's provide a little context for a couple of different things. I do want to talk more about the Green Report because I do think that what you're saying about how it did a good job of obviously identifying some key items. We do have a very severe ongoing demographic issue. We are getting old fast, and we're not replacing these old people with new people fast enough. That's a very important thing. Some of the recommendations, like the old school austerity plan, like just don't spend no more money, save your money. Yeah, but you still gotta live. So like money has no value if you don't use it. As an economist, I guess you know that. It's like it's not worth anything if you don't use it, if you don't trade it for goods or services.
Yeah, so, exactly. If you look at the G7 countries, we actually has lowest, deficits as a proportion of GDP. And, look at south border. United States has way more, many folds of deficits.
So that's one of the things that I want us to get through, to like the concept of perspective. Because perspective is really powerful. We can talk about perspective when it comes to our economic situation. And we can also talk about the perspective, because I grew up in a small town, 1,000-ish people. We were all white. All of us Caucasian, and most of them were like, everybody was Christian. Like it was just a small town. We all went to the same school, and you all like did the same things. There were only a half a dozen different last names. Like, so if anybody comes in who looks different, regardless of how much value they bring, there is a less than welcoming feeling necessarily. And I'm not looking back at everybody that I grew up with and saying y'all are racist. That's not what I mean. What I mean is and we talked about this briefly, it's a lack of exposure. I'm not familiar with or accustomed to you or the way that you do things or, and it's just, there's a lack of comfort, which means there's a lack of education and a lack of exposure. It doesn't necessarily mean that there could be a lack of collaboration. It's just there needs to be a process to get there.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Majority of this discrimination incidents in this country are subtle. I intended actually, right, that what you have described, people just don't have that exposure, right? They don't know how to deal with newcomers and their cultures, their way of life, and so on. It's sometimes it's I'm still friendly. You're from a small town. You know this really well. That's part of culture. But I just don't feel comfortable to deal with you. That kind of sense of lack of communication, lack of connection, right, really has some adverse effect of newcomers. Because this powerful social network in this province that's important effects on your, meaningful employment, your housing, your healthcare, childcare arrangements, right? So the issue here we're talking about, I made a point in the Toronto Star recently. Being friendly is not equivalent to being welcoming.
No.
Which is more important, of course, to settlement and integration success of newcomers. Most of them are from Asian countries.
Yeah, speaking of Asian countries, so the month of May happens to be Asian Culture Month or Asian Cultural Awareness Month, and you said years ago Asian and Pacific Island Cultural Heritage Month. So the month of May for a while has been a time to celebrate and reflect on and maybe educate people on Asian way of life or culture. The issue with that is Asia's kind of a big place, and there's a lot of people there and a lot of different groups of people. Asia isn't just China and Japan and Taiwan. Asia's big.
Right. A lot of time is that they look very similar.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of skin color, eye color, and so on. This is part of, as we discussed earlier, it's the evolution of psychology theory, and people are the human brain evolution process is very slow.
Yes.
Even for millions of years, our human brain didn't change as much.
Yeah.
So we are kind of a little bit, lazy in terms of that categorization, right?
Because we want to be efficient. Because we want to be efficient.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So my ancestors, we go back to, and I don't mean like my grandfather's grandfather. I mean, we're going way, way back from an evolutionary standpoint. There was a point in time where my ancestors needed to distinguish between this person and this person and this person when we had a lower mental capacity and we needed to be able to do it quickly. And the easiest way to do that with white people was their hair and their eye color probably are different. So I know they're different. But if we were to take a random sample of Japanese or Chinese people, the majority of them are going to have similar hair and eye color. So for a white person, after so much evolution, it's kind of like, well, they all look the same, which comes from a place where at one point in time that was selected for because it had an advantage. But we're so much more sophisticated now that advantage it's not a thing anymore, but it's never been selected out for, so it's still there, and now it manifests into racism because all Asians look the same. And that's not a thing that's not a thing.
That's a phenomenon. That's a social phenomenon, right? It's called a stereotyping.
Yes.
You probably heard about that already, right? So people try to just have this kind of same old ideas about, a group of people, even they are very diverse. We talk about the Asian people and so on. They have totally, from appearance look similar, but and at least, in terms of social economic culture, right? Way of life, the kind of food they eat, the kind of culture, the arts to celebrate are totally different. So you're right. We are more civilized. Okay, we are more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Okay, and that emphasizes the role of education and public awareness of diversity and inclusivity. As the Prime Minister rightfully said, diversity is our strength.
Yes,
and
very much so.
You don't even need to go abroad. You already have exposure of the global citizens.
Yeah.
In Canada, that's our advantage, right? So I think it is fairly important for people in the province to understand, right? The subtle difference of we talk about being friendly, being welcoming, and you also understand the different challenges the newcomers are facing. Okay.
A little empathy.
Yeah, a little empathy. That's right. To give you one example, this kind of subtle issues might happen. For example, you're from a small town.
Yes.
Right? In Newfoundland, of maybe a few hundred people, 1,000 people. And in this province, we call them your baymans.
Yeah.
Right? If you are from St. John's, you'll be called a townies.
Yeah.
Right? That's already a little bit differentiation.
It is.
Or discrimination.
And you feel it. I feel it. Because I'm in real estate. That's my day job.
Yes.
I help people buy and sell houses. And I can be in a house and somebody will be talking about the shed that's there and there's a garage here and there's space to build another garage in the back. And I'll be showing it to a townie and the town will be like, this is a bayman's house. I don't need this. This house is for a bayman. And everybody knows what he means.
Yes.
So white people aren't immune to that either. Okay, we got a lot more to talk about. We'll come back. I want to talk a little more about the project that you're working on with the university and maybe touch some more on the Green Report.
Yeah, okay, that'd be great.
And also, just a little joke as we segue. All Asians look alike. A good friend of mine is Indian. His family grew up in India, and he was born and lived all of his life in Canada. He lives in India now. He told me once that all us white people smell like milk and cheese. And
That's also stereotyping.
exactly.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we're not immune to it.
No,
So-
not immune. That's
We're gonna take a quick
That's what I'm
break.
saying. The awareness is the key.
Exactly.
We know we are, almost all of us, are somewhat, to some extent, biased, prejudiced.
Yeah.
To some extent, but sometimes we don't admit it. Sometimes we just don't realize.
Yeah,
I
and
think that we
doesn't
more
always
important.
come from a place of hate.
Exactly.
It's just a place of ignorance.
Yes.
And you can cure ignorance a lot easier than you can cure hate. We will be right back after this break.
All right, girls.
Mom, you said it's played again.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
Just once in a while, at parties and stuff. If that's what your kid says, they'll probably also tell you that it's not a big deal. But that's no reason not to talk about it. You could tell them that you think that's a good thing and that you're really happy they don't use it that often. Then ask them why. Maybe deep down they know it's bad. They just need your help realizing it. From there, it should be pretty easy to drop off the hint that their brain is still growing and that they shouldn't smoke pot. At least not until they're older.
Visit drugfreekidscanada.org for more tools to help start the conversation.
And welcome back to Out of the Fog. Still here with Dr. Tony Fang. Dr. Fang, we've covered a lot of stuff. I want to talk about two other things right now. I want to talk a little bit about the economic impact that immigration, specifically Asian immigration, just be given the context of our conversation, has on an economy and could have and has had on our local economy. And then I'd like to talk a little bit of some of the challenges that immigrants can face in coming in here. So let's start, as an economist, how good is immigration?
Yeah, that's, a billion-dollar question, of course. And I started a project about 10 years ago when I was teaching at the York University in Toronto, and on a project funded by Metropolis Project and the Shirk, which is the only one winner for the country at that time. We are very proud of the kind of work we were doing. What we did essentially is to estimate the macroeconomic impact of immigration to Canada. Right?
It's a big question.
It's a big question,
Yeah.
a big model of more than 200 equations.
Wow.
And we're using census data. And for 10 years simulation, based on a hypothetical question, what about if we actually increase immigration intake to 1% of population? Okay?
Okay.
That is really forward-looking, actually. Our results find that having this 1% of population of immigrants would actually increase economic growth as measured by GDP, okay? And, employment, and there's no, also positive effect on government fiscal balances, and no adverse effect on employment and wages, okay? Which is fairly positive.
Well,
And
of course it is.
Yeah, of course it is. You already agree.
But if you take, let's say, 50,000 immigrants and bring them to Newfoundland, Labrador, okay? And we cling so hard to our culture, and we already have this townie versus Bayman thing where Bayman want to change their own oil and cut their firewood, and townies are fancy, so they get their brakes done at the garage. Like, it's all foolishness. But then you bring 50,000 people in that don't necessarily look or speak or celebrate the same kind of things that everybody has always done here, because that's normal in Newfoundland. And so knowing that it increases GDP, knowing that it's healthy for the economy, knowing that it's good for everything else. You're bringing in skilled trades that we might have a shortage in. Like, try getting a family doctor in St. John's. It's not easy, right? So what's the holdup? Is it because people are like, yeah?
That's right. Exactly. We're talking about, we have our aging population. We have our lower fertility rate. And the issue here is that it's not easy. People are, in this province, very, much sitting in a comfort zone. Okay, especially for the senior citizens, right? It's not easy. I mean, to be honest, changing the people's mindsets at that age, right? Even myself.
And if you're 70 years old, and somebody talks about Asian immigrants, I mean, you might think about Pearl Harbor. So and they're not related at all, but it's an association, and we have such an old province already. Our demographics are in trouble, like we talked about. That you could have every 25-year-old in the province voting for more and more immigration. There's just not enough of them.
That's right. I mean, too important. Just think about people's mindset. Too important, what we call misperceptions, okay, about immigration in this province. First, number one, immigrants will take jobs away from locals.
They will bring them.
Absolutely true, untrue. And we talk about, the doctors, right? The professors and the lawyers, high-skilled people. I mean, the job they are doing are not the same as we are doing here in the province, right? We need, as you just mentioned, the family doctors in the rural areas.
In my experience,
yes,
immigrants are doing jobs that we are either incapable of doing,
yes,
because we don't have the professional training, or seem to just be too lazy or feel we're too good for somehow. So there's two, and I think the higher end of that, obviously, I don't mean higher or lower as in better or worse, but doctors, engineers, those specific vocations. If we don't have people to do those jobs, of course we're going to hire them elsewhere. But the people who come in and do what others might consider like no particular vocational training, an entry-level job,
and
that kind of stuff.
Right?
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
But there's an amount of grit and dedication and just an unwillingness to quit that comes from immigration, that comes from immigrants in their work ethic, because we're all too caught up and not realizing how great we have it. We don't have the gratitude for the fact that, do you mean I can go here and I can work for 10 hours a day, and when I leave, I'll have this much money? And like, I can send it back to my mother and my grandmother in the Philippines, and I can, and we just don't have an appreciation for that because we're spoiled.
Exactly. That's exactly, actually. I'm glad you mentioned that. Consistent with my findings of recent research, okay? That's also cited by the Green Report, by the way, okay?
Interesting.
And in this province, before pandemic, of course, in 2019, 43% employers in this province reported skill labor shortages. Exactly in the two categories, right? In the highly skilled, semi-skilled categories, especially skilled trades, okay? About 50%, to 60% employers reported hiring difficulties. Then at a lower level, as you said, productions, service workers with no, skills certification, around 50% as well. So, that's exactly, the purpose of immigration policy is not to actually compete with local workers.
To fill gaps.
To fill a labor skill gap.
Exactly.
Right? And a lot of people have misperceptions. That's the one we want to clear out. The second one is that, the immigrants, they come in, they take our resources, they change our cultures. Okay? Again, that's not true. Right?
Of course it's not.
Based on our research, of course, at York University, immigrants come in, they pay tax immediately. But they only receive the benefits, 30, 40 years later, the pension benefits, okay, other kind of benefits. You need to make contribution to the employment insurance program before you can receive, right, that entitlement, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing, there's no evidence, actually, immigrants are more likely to receive those kind of social security programs. If anything, you don't know how to apply.
They're less likely.
Less likely, exactly. Also, there's this so-called healthy immigrant phenomenon, because they, in order to get into Canada, they have to pass all these medical checks.
Yes.
Okay?
You're much more likely as an immigrant to come into, well, we'll say Newfoundland, and not be abusing our already overwhelmed healthcare system that we spend a lot of money on. You're much less likely to be the person who's all over that.
Right. Actually, on the contrary, because they pay tax right away, right? They are younger, okay? They're more productive in that sense. and they make contribution to the social security programs to make it more sustainable, right? And the big issue for this province is that we are a population declining. Is Asian. We have fewer taxpayers to support the more increasingly large base of pensioners.
Yes.
It's a big issue for our healthcare system, our social security system.
So, like, why don't we just open the gates? And, like, I don't understand. Like, this to me seems like such a simple solution.
Right, but you have to think about, right, when politicians, right, they make these important decisions, they have to look at the constituents, right, which are mostly older, okay, and many in the rural, remote areas.
So we just got to wait for all these old people to die off and stop voting, and then we can make good decisions? Like, that's ridiculous.
That's the sign. That's the reason why we have to increase our educational effort, increase awareness, why this is a very viable and crucial solution to our aging population, to our demographic challenges, to our future economic prosperity, right? And make sure that we get more, resonating, more support from our residents, so even the senior residents.
Take off that false friendly mask and put on an actual welcome one. Dr. Fang, thank you so much for coming out. Greatly appreciated. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this. Okay, welcome back to Out of the Fog. You heard it here. I mean, yes, we're friendly, but there's a difference between friendly and welcoming. And maybe it's time we take off that friendly mask and put on a smile that's welcoming and really mean it. Because whether you realize it or not, there is not enough of us paying taxes and not enough of us voting that we're going to be able to affect positive change. Open the doors. Let the people in who are going to do the jobs we can't or the ones we won't. We'll see you next week.
If you have a comment about this